Activate Your Introvert, the weekly show to help leaders build performance by understanding introversion.
In this week's show, does a leader have to attend leaving parties? Working from home or the office? Which is right? A discussion with Jim Culverwell. Jim is the premises mentor. He helps businesses get the right premises on the right terms for them. Question of the week: how to handle people who don't want to go to drinks after work. In the news recently, what's the role of a leader? When I ask this question, I normally get responses around strategy, direction, vision, and inspiring the team. I'm sure you could add more. Do you think the role of a leader includes visiting all leaving drinks to keep up morale? I'm touching on Partygate, of course, and various members of Parliament who are in the news for attending drinks during lockdown. I'm interested because of the social/work boundaries involved. Having said all of that, surely a leader needs to demonstrate role model behaviours, so attending events which many of the people you lead are not allowed to attend is going to be problematic. In the Times, a poll suggests that 84% of British adults who started working from home during the pandemic say they plan to carry on doing so for part of the week. 8% say they plan to return to the office full time. This one's interesting because of this week's guest, and because of the introverts like working from home statements that are often made, which I normally say are rubbish. I've now asked 50 people, do you prefer home or office working? And there is little difference between introvert and extrovert in the answers. Most answer, it depends. Depends on what's the role, what's the office like, and what am I trying to do at the time. The Guardian makes reference to a league table of post-pandemic Zoom towns, places where adverts for jobs that can be worked flexibly or at least partly from home. Firstly, it's the number of ads which caught my eye. They've trebled since 2020. The Office for National Statistics predicts that 50% of workers will work at least partly from home by this autumn, while 2/3 of Britons already work flexibly in some way. The world is moving on, regardless of politicians telling us we must all return to the office. However, I do believe that Jacob Rees-Mogg is right. Yep, I don't say that very often either. People still need to bounce ideas off of each other, and they learn from each other almost by osmosis. We don't need to be in the office full-time to do that, and we do need offices and homes designed for the way the whole team are working, including quiet spaces, which might help introverts, and more collaborative spaces, which will help extroverts. We also need to learn to manage people in this new hybrid home Zoom capacity. The current workplace was created for extroverts by extroverts, especially open plan offices where people can interrupt, talk, and access your space without invitation. It's draining and doesn't produce the best chance for introverts to perform well. So, if we're adapting office working, let's consider that. And finally, a strange news item caught my eye. Turtles are bad map readers. Odd, I thought, as all the turtles I watch don't even carry maps. But researchers at Deakin University in Australia attached GPS devices to 22 hawksbill turtles. They then tracked them from their nesting grounds to feeding sites elsewhere. They found that the turtles took roundabout routes. One swam 812 miles to get to an island 109 miles away. Our results provide compelling evidence that hawksbill turtles only have a relatively crude map sense in the open ocean. So it seems that the mental maps turtles have aren't much use. But then, how useful are our mental maps? A mental map is something we all create from the experiences we've had. We tend to use them to find our way in the future. But unless the future matches the past, our mental maps aren't always a lot of use. The most common one, of course, is bias. Bias is simply a collection of things we've seen, noticed or heard. It doesn't make them right. Are introverts shy, quiet and non-collaborative? Is a noisy, banter-filled workplace good? It's a mental map, which is no better than those poor turtles. So, if you find yourself answering things quickly on gut feeling or doing things automatically, ask yourself about your mental maps when you get the chance. But now it's time to consult my map and find the next section of the show. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, John.
So we're going to talk about working from home, working from the office from the point of a premises expert. Just before we get into that, could you tell me, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And what difference has that made to you in your business?
I think I'm a natural introvert. About 20 years ago, I realized that I needed to become an extrovert. So I think I probably trained myself in order to be able to project myself, my business offering, to enable people to take advantage of it. That was through networking meetings where I learned a massive amount about how to project oneself, how to network, how to meet people, how to engage, and how to build trusting relationships.
And I think that's so important, isn't it? As you just said, it's how do you build trusting relationships? And the answer is introverts absolutely can be very good at networking.
Oh, yeah.
It's not a barrier at all, other than too much time face-to-face may leave us a bit drained, but there's other tactics to get around that.
As with most things, either extreme is undesirable and happy medium is where you want to be. So I think a mixture of extrovert approach with a natural introversion is probably a mix that is quite attractive to a lot of people.
Returning back to the office though, the debate has become quite polarised and touching on extremes. Oh, you must work from home. Oh, you must work from the office. I'd be really interested in your views on working from home or the office.
As we've already said, the two extremes are undesirable, but most of all, it depends on personality and it depends on circumstances. Now, some people have a lot nicer home environment to work in than their office, because perhaps their office environment hasn't been invested in, isn't attractive, is perhaps noisy, is cramped, is full of people asking questions, is disruptive. So that person might find working from home a lot more appealing. I'm very lucky. I've got a garden that I can look out on or go for a walk in. I've got plenty of space. I'm not going to be disturbed. But 20 years ago, I was working from home and I had 3 youngsters tumbling around the house. So working from home meant fitting in around them, meeting their needs as well as my own and my clients' needs, which I have to say was fine, but it was a different challenge.
I know that some of the people I've spoken to, they had some employees who would work from home and it was brilliant, doing exactly the same job as some others. But as you said, their home wasn't designed for it, or there was interruptions. My favourite, in inverted commas, was many years ago. My son was just at the age where he couldn't yet walk, but he could crawl up the stairs. There was meant to be a stairgate across the bottom of the stairs. My working from home was working in the loft. The next thing I knew, he crawled up the stairs and crawled up the loft ladder, and there's a gurgling, happy little child. His head just appeared above the loft hatch, and I'm thinking, how am I going to deal with this? Jumped to him in my panic and roll backwards all the way down, and it worked out okay. But yeah, it is about design at home.
Yeah, that brings us on to one of the things which I'm very strong about, which is resourcing. If you have somebody working from an office, they're resourced. They've got their desk, they've got their computer, they've got facilities, tea, coffee, telephony, broadband, whatever you want to put on the list. Those things all are available to the office worker. If you want your staff to be able to work effectively from home, then you've got to resource them as if they were in the office. When we first went into lockdown, this business of, oh, we're all working from home, isn't it great, came up. And you'd see messages on LinkedIn saying how much money we were going to save. And yes, savings might come from it, but let's invest in those staff working from home and make sure they've got a satisfactory environment to work from home, not sitting on the sofa with their laptop on their knee, as you still see lots of people doing. And in the office, you wouldn't necessarily let people do that. Although having said that, office design is changing. to accommodate different ways of working. And I think a lot of people find the home working environment easy to concentrate, easy to focus, no disturbances. So they're getting the work, in inverted commas, done at home, but they're going to go into the office to do the bits that aren't work, the collaborating, the engaging, the communicating, the bouncing ideas. And what you don't need for those things is a desk and a computer. You need soft furnishing, a coffee table, a coffee machine, and different setup. And so the thing that I'm seeing, and it started 2 years ago, is redesigning the office for a different purpose.
There's two things around that. One is, I've said for a long time, open plan offices really do not help introverts. So what you're saying is office design is or has been changing steadily for the last couple of years, largely driven by the working from home, working from the office thing, or something else?
Driven by leadership, actually. I had a great example of a client that I helped in Basingstoke. We grew very rapidly over a period of about 5 years in a massive multi-occupied building. So we had 7 different units on 5 different levels in this donut-shaped building. The HR director realised that he had staff working on level 1 who'd never met staff working on level 5.
Wow.
Because they were all in their little silos. So the driving force, and there's lots to say about this case, but when we moved to a headquarters building on the other side of Basingstoke, getting everybody under one roof in one space, half of the top floor, which was probably about 6,000 square feet, was given over to collaboration space, bench seating, a little cafe, fridges, microwaves for people to bring their food in from home to cook, soft seating, so that the mingling, what people call the water fountain piece, was created in what would it have been, a sixth of this building, half a floor in a 3-story building. And the idea of that was to make sure that everybody bumped into one another at some point during the day. And you couldn't very easily arrive at the office and leave the office without going to that space. And to have internal meetings in that space rather than taking up formal meeting rooms. That was 2016, by the way.
Effectively designing a giant water cooler, if I can put it like that, but looking for the water cooler effect.
Yes.
By the way you structured the office. So that must allow for the collaborative element of work. Quieter elements, the thinking elements might take place at home, might take place in other parts of the office.
Mm-hmm.
What's your prediction for the future then? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, more of that, I think, because working from home can be a place to focus. The work piece, to a greater extent, is going to be done out of the office. One's always got to allow for the people who, maybe young people, are flat sharing and there is no space to work and they don't want to be sitting on the bed with the laptop, quite understandably. And so the working in the office is the best option for them. The work environment has got to be available and properly resourced within the office. But there also needs to be a recognition that the way people use the office is changing as a result of our experience of what working from home can do. Your point about open plan is really interesting. I'm long enough in the tooth to have started working when open plan was a new thing, the early 1980s. And I can remember a building being built on the edge of the City of London, on the edge of the Square Mile, which was predominantly open plan. It was a solicitor's office. And it was a big new thing. But actually, solicitors, as an example, like to be cellular because what they do is about focusing, and disturbance within the office is disruptive. So there's a far higher percentage of cellular division within lawyers' space than typically in other units. But whenever I've had to work in an office in the last 25 years, being disrupted by what other people are doing around me has always been something I've recognized. The flip side of that, and kind of everything we say, there's a flip side of. When I started working, I was working as a rookie commercial property agent in central London. And actually overhearing other people's conversations was not essential, but beneficial to all of us, because we would all learn what was going on.
By osmosis, almost.
Yeah, it was a marketplace. We know that collaboration is important and that being isolated at home all of your time is not necessarily good, getting out, meeting, but it all depends on individual circumstances and individual requirements. And the driver, the leadership, is what drives that. analyzes it, looks at people's characteristics, people's circumstances, people's job role, and that has to determine then the percentage of working from home, working in the office.
So very much about leadership taking an active role and going, what is the right thing for this business right now and over the next couple of years, considering the strategy, what they do, and the people. One final quick question then.
Yeah.
We've talked about office design changing, which I think is great for this collaborative, hybrid, whatever you want to call it, working. And it sounds as if it's good for introverts too. Are big companies downsizing offices now? I've read about this in the news. Of course, I never know whether that's right or not.
We were talking a minute ago about repurposing offices for the collaboration, communication piece. And I think what people are finding is that actually that takes up more space than a row of desks. So whilst a third of your staff might be working from home, the 2/3 that are in are on soft seat, taking up more space. So the opportunity to lose a floor out of a 5-story building, say, yes, it works for some businesses, but it's not a clear-cut thing. So some businesses are finding that they can reduce their floor space. It's a consequence rather than a leader.
Could you give us one quick tip for a business owner that's thinking about getting new premises?
I always say to my clients, answer this one fundamental question. It's a very simple question, but the answer is much more complex and deep. What does the business need? Need is about the physical components of the property, how big it is, where it is, what it has inside it, what it has outside it, and then look at the lease, the document that you're going to agree with the landlord, and understand each of the components in that lease and how it impacts on the business, and answer that question again. What does the business need? Lease length, how much rent it can justify paying, what responsibilities it's going to have. All of those things go into the lease. And whilst a lot of people might think that a lease is a fait accompli, it's a document that you simply sign and swallow, they're much more flexible than that. And the flexibility is in those headings. And keeping in mind that question, what does the business need, is about not taking on things that are inappropriate to the business. So you've got those two elements. There's the document and there's the physical building. But that central question, answering that in all its complexity, is going to generate the best outcome.
Thank you. And Jim, I'm sure that some of the listeners will be going, they'd like to catch up with you. What's the best way for them to find you?
My website, culverwellconsulting.co.uk.
It's been a great discussion. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Likewise. Thank you, John. Nice to talk to you.
My takeaways from that discussion were both home working and office working have benefits. How do you get the best of both? The first imperative in the working from home versus office debate is what's right for the business and the people when doing the job they need to be doing. And number 3, office design is changing, and it's going to allow more collaborative spaces and more quiet working spaces. Open plan is not a good thing for many people who need to focus, especially introverts. What were your takeaways? Add to a discussion on the Facebook page. Activate your introvert. What would you like to know about introversion in business? This week's question comes from Alex. How to handle an employee who refuses to go for drinks after work. This is often asked, and the people perceived as not wanting to go are often perceived as the introverts. Are there team benefits from socialising after work? Probably yes, depending on the socialising. If a team know each other better, they're likely to work better together. Well, actually it's more precise to say that most very good teams have done some level of socialising, but not everyone wants as much social contact, especially social contact lubricated by alcohol after work. If they're introverts and already peopled out by the end of the day, this will be even more true. In some companies it might be essential if the person is up for promotion. That translates as the company is probably quite political, with a small p. That's unfair, maybe wrong, but sometimes showing up at after-work events is expected. Maybe they need to know the company culture is like that, but that's different to telling them they must attend. If they know what the end time is, it will help. If they're involved in the planning stages of the event, it helps. If you can avoid the drinks being an activity-based thing where everybody has to do a certain activity, it helps. In fact, the more there is choice and the less people have to, the better. It's not just introverts who don't like after-work drinks. If you're building a culture where the after-work drinks are essential, maybe that's something to consider changing. In other words, don't handle the employee, Alex. Think about the event and how you communicate it with everybody else.
I'm John Baker. Thank you for listening. I hope you found it useful. There's a new episode every Thursday at activateyourintrovert.co.uk and your favourite podcast provider. Till then, go be introversial, activating your introverts, building your business.